I'm Nancy Tartaglione, international box office editor and senior contributor at Deadline. And today I have the great honor of being here with the legendary Oscar-winning actor and producer, Michael Douglas. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I guess legendary is what happens when you get old enough.
Oh, I think you were a legend a while ago anyway.
Very kind. Very kind.
And actually, something, just something I wanted to mention, and then kind of will help perhaps lead us into something else. But I recall that the first film that I ever saw in a cinema that I remember having sort of an impact on me that had, you know, kind of like a message was China Syndrome. I was 10 years old at the time. I think I must have known you from Streets of San Francisco,
right.
You know, but I'm
It was
dating
too late
myself
for you to
too,
stay
but
up, but that's all right.
my parents were fairly liberal about that. But and that made such a mark on me, and I just, you know, recall it. I also was a big fan of Jack Lemmon, so, you know, and it made me aware, I think, that, you know, cinema had this power to talk about issues and whatnot. And I know that activism is something that's, you know, close to your heart and whatnot. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about that sort of through time and you know, how involved you still are.
Sure, that's a good question. Well, I was a new producer. My first time out, I did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We got an Oscar. I had not really anticipated a production career, and I was in television. Now I'd won an Academy Award, and so I was, here we go. And the script came across to me, The China Syndrome, and I thought it was a great horror movie. I really was not into nuclear disarmament or anything else, but just thought this whole sense of this machine, you know, having this omnipotent power was intriguing. And then through the process of making the picture and bringing on a couple of experts in the nuclear field, particularly there were two quality assurance scientists with General Electric who had lost faith in the industry, the nuclear power industry, and come over to the other side to talk about what was wrong. And as we continued to do more and more research on that, I became really fascinated and terrified, you know, at this incredible amount of power that existed. And then people like Jack Lemmon, who was attracted to it because of the issue, and waited a long time, over a year. We kept telling him false promises. We're almost there, financing and all of that. It kind of came together. And then, of course, Jane Fonda had been developing Karen Silkwood's story at the same time, and the studio said, look, why don't you two get together? And China Syndrome was further along, so Jane came in as a partner. Right. And then the casting, and then that started me on this element, this area of nuclear disarmament. That was finalized by when the movie opened. Right. And we were heavily criticized about how it was ridiculous and silly for Hollywood to be involved in such an important issue, and very dismissive. And it was the height of Jane as G.I. Jane and the Vietnam War and all that. And we were very dismissive. And then I think 12 days after the movie opened, 3 Mile Island. And I had an epiphany. And it was done completely by the end of the China Syndrome was an actual meltdown in the plant, and we brought in our nuclear experts to give us the most likely scenario of what would happen, orchestrated all the steps that would happen to a meltdown. And when we were finished, and it was a great ending, and then 3 Mile Island happened, we had 150 computer steps. 150 computer steps that would happen in our script. And we matched it up to 3 Mile Island, and 90% of the steps were exactly the same. And this moment came over me like, my God, I'm not a religious person, but somebody's talking to me. And so that began my quest, or my energy in the nuclear disarmament area.
Right.
And that was followed a few years later at Christmas time, coming home from a party, a Christmas party late at night. I lived in New York City on the West Side, and I was walking up with a friend of mine, Jan Wenner, who's at the time owned Rolling Stone magazine, and that we were just coming home, and we were passing by 72nd Street and the Dakota House, and John Lennon had just been shot. And I knew John, and certainly, Jan did, and we just couldn't believe it. And so after that murder, we became actively involved in small arms and disarmament, and started a couple of organizations. And those have been principally the two issues, nuclear disarmament and weapons, that has been my activism.
Right. And contrary, I mean, it was unfortunately serendipitous, I suppose, it was horrible what happened at 3 Mile Island, but it was this kind of crazy coincidence that, the timing.
It was an epiphany.
And I mean, even at 10 years old, I remember it, but we lived in New Jersey, so it wasn't that far,
Right.
But you said that, people were saying, the film business shouldn't be involved in, talking about these kinds of issues, and clearly that has changed. So
Yes.
how have you seen that kind of evolve? I mean,
Well, it's been a hard and long struggle, and not completely successful by any means. We've had some success in the reduction of the stockpile of nuclear weapons that have existed. That's been reduced, but nowhere near as much. And I must say I've had to convert too, because I was not supportive of nuclear energy or nuclear power. But with the climate situation, I've had to resign myself to the fact that nuclear power in the interim, until we find a longer lasting,
Right.
will be part of overcoming the climate situation. Although I hate to see both the development of new nuclear paths, as much as I hate to see the refreshment of our nuclear weapons into sort of smaller arms. We have to get rid of them.
right. And Hollywood, you feel though, and have felt throughout the span of time, Hollywood does have a place in talking about these issues.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated issue. It's not a touchy-feely issue. There's no children directly involved, per se. It's not one of those things that you can get your hands around, and it's complicated as far as treaties are concerned and all of that. But being in the business, being a celebrity, allows you a podium,
Right.
to speak from, and hopefully you can make a difference.
And otherwise, what are you kind of focused on these days? Not in terms of
Retiring.
activism or whatever, retiring in
I'd
golf.
say, I mean, those are long-standing issues. I just the other area which I'm involved in is the United Nations. I am I call a messenger of peace. There's like 9 of us, and I focus in the area of disarmament. I was appointed by Secretary General Kofi Annan in 1998. And I just want to make the world a more peaceful, better place. I guess my overriding issue is, and I was influenced by a lecture by a man named Buckminster Fuller when I was in college in the early 1960s, which basically gave me a sense of how tiny this planet is. And, I know we're doing Hubble spaceships and sending a lot of people out and trying to find telescopes for any sign of any life out there in this omnipotent, this impossibly large solar systems, and we haven't yet. So we are pretty fortunate, I guess, pretty lucky, and maybe we will find something else in my lifetime or in the future. But for now, this is it.
Right.
This little tiny planet is it. And I cannot get over the fact that politicians and battles can't realize that this planet is the most important thing. And why are we fighting these wars for territory when the issues are basically the issues of survival, of starvation, of balancing human beings with all the other animals that exist in this world? I'm not a religious person. I'm finding at this point in my life, though, that nature, this beautiful, beautiful world around us, is my faith.
Right.
And if I take away the human issue of it all, this is heaven. This place is heaven.
Right.
It is the most magical, most beautiful place in the world. And it really upsets me that we seem to not get over this, and the desire for power, for wealth, for greed. I don't know what it is. It's going on for so long. The conflict still arises. We're talking about AI on one side, and we're still trying to kill each other
Right.
on the other. So we have not progressed in certain areas, and that's very frustrating.
In certain areas, absolutely. I could have a conversation like this with you all day, but I
Right.
know I'm going to get kicked out of here. But let's talk a little bit about the
Okay.
business, in terms of, are you, when you said earlier you were, thinking about retiring, are you actually retiring?
No, I mean, no, but I haven't worked since 22. I did this series, Franklin.
Right.
Playing Ben Franklin. That was in 22. It was a tough show. One of these mini series. It was
Yeah.
eight months, and I finished and said, I'm going to take a break, because I'd never really taken a break in 55, almost 60 years of working, except I had a cancer bout for about 2 or 3 years, 15 years ago.
Right.
And so I took 23 off. I
Okay.
took 23 off, and I really liked it. I really liked it. And I realized part of why I've been working so hard is to have enough finances that I could afford, if I wanted to retire. And next thing I knew, I slipped into 24, and here we are in December 24, and I still haven't worked, and I still like it. I really like it a lot. So I'm open, to doing something, but the latter part of the last few years have really been about, what have I not done? And that was sort of what I was thinking about. Is my entire career had been kind of contemporary. Almost everything I've done is just contemporary. So I said, well, I haven't really done comedy. I mean, I've done it a little bit, but I'm intrigued by comedy. I think comedy is so underappreciated. I don't know why we never see pictures for best movies for comedies, or even actors. Not a lot of appreciation. So I did this series called The Kaminsky Method, and had with Chuck Lorre and Alan Arkin. It was a great team. If you want to learn anything about comedy, then have Chuck Lorre and Alan Arkin, which was great. And I never did a green screen movie before, and I was fascinated about how this works with green screen. So I did
So you
these
became Hank Pym.
Hank Pym,
Yeah.
these Marvel films. I never done a period picture before. So then, and also I did the Ben Franklin thing in
Right,
part.
right.
So
All right. Well, I would love to know what else you would love to conquer, but I'm getting whistled at here.
Really?
can't-
We
have
stopped
to-
already. Okay.
Also,
I'm
we
sorry.
haven't stopped
Oh.
yet, but it's just, but I think we have to, and I also don't want you to waste all of your material for the,
Well, they
the
won't
bigger
hear it.
talk you're going to do.
warm up. Yeah.
Just tell me one thing that you still haven't done that you want to do.
A horror movie.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe kind of a scary, some interesting horror stuff that's going on. I'm not talking about necessarily blood and guts, but just some good horror stuff. I'm looking at flirting with one for next year, maybe, but I haven't been thinking about it
Okay.
a lot.
Well, we'll call Jason Blum and see.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.